What is up, fish homies? I'm out here in the kitchen. You know what that means. We are boilie making today. As you can see, we got some ingredients back there. We are going to make some hook baits for you guys, some wafters and some corkball pop-ups. A wafter is basically a bait that doesn't pop up like a pop-up, but it still floats off the bottom. So your hook will be laying flat on the bottom like this, and then your bait will float just above it. So it's basically critically balanced to your hook. I'll show you how to set that up either in this video or one of the next videos. But for now, let's get started. So first thing I suggest you do is make a list of everything that you're going to use in your mix. You don't want to get halfway through your base mix and forget something and then just realize you messed up. Yesterday I tried making this boilie video. This is a perfect example. So yesterday I tried making this pop-up video, and I forgot to put one of the main freaking ingredients, so they came out all wrong. So today I'm remaking the video. I kind of touched up the ingredients to make it a little bit easier for you guys. This is gonna be just your basic base mix. You can, it's actually a pretty good base mix. It should work year round, minus the fish meal. You can switch that out for something else. Yeah, pretty much all year this will work. And it has some good attractors in it, and I'll go through everything and pretty much explain it and let you know what's going on here. Alright, so I probably spelled some things wrong. I was rushing through this list, but this is the list I was talking about here, and this is how you want to get started. This is a list for 100 gram base mix. It's also good to start with 100 grams because you can multiply it easily to get it up to 1,000 gram mix if you do like it and you do want to produce a bunch. And if you do make mistakes like I did yesterday, you're not wasting a bunch of material and a bunch of money. So you can see here, those are my grams and everything, and if you add all those up, it will be to 100 grams. So I'll run through the ingredients real quick and tell you why I'm using them. If you want to skip this part, you can. But when I was trying to learn to make boilies, this was pretty important to me. So I figured I would might as well skim through it for you guys. So first up, we got the roasted peanut meal. I'm barely adding any of this. It's kind of a filler and it smells really nice. I don't think the fish can smell it underwater, but I can smell it, so it's just for like my peace of mind. And like I said, it's a filler. I also think it has a little bit of oils in there, which always helps. Next up, we have whey protein. This is from Bulk Supplements. You can get this on Amazon. Pretty much all this stuff you can get online. Pretty much all on Amazon, with a few things came from Big Carp Tackle. But yeah, this is whey protein. It's like 80% protein, and it kind of helps the skin on your boilie harden up a little bit, and it's packed full of protein, and the carp love protein, right? Also, it's water soluble. That's another thing I wanted to touch up on, is these boilies, you want to be very water soluble. These are the ones that are gonna be on your hook. So these are the ones when the carp come in, you want them to see them first, and you want them to go bite that first compared to all the baits around your hook. So water soluble means it like pretty much evaporates in water, if you could say that. It pretty much disintegrates in water. Like if you put salt or sugar in water and swirl it around, eventually all the granules just go into the water, and that's what water soluble means. So if you want to test out something you have to see if it's water soluble, put it in a cup of water, swirl it around. If it doesn't melt right away, leave it for 10 or 15 minutes and see what happens. And that is how you know your ingredient is water soluble. You also don't want it too soluble, or else it's just gonna turn to mush and fall off your hair. So that is something to keep in mind and to play with. One of the next ingredients here is betaine HCl. There's two types of betaine. I think the other one is TMG. They both work in my experience, but this one I've read dissolves faster in water, so that's why I use this one. You can get this on Amazon. It's a very, very important attractor. If you look at fish foods, at like your fish store, or you look at like pond pellets or fish pellets, they almost always have betaine in it. It's a very, very high attractor, not just for carp, but for catfish, even bass I've read are attracted to that. Next up, this is fish meal. It doesn't have a label or anything, but I got this from Big Carp Tackle. It's not water soluble, but it does have oils in it, which will leak out into the water. You don't want to use fish meal when the water temps drop below about 50 degrees, I believe, because then the oils in the fish meal will congeal and they won't leak through the water. It kind of locks up your bait. But this is pretty cheap, and it's high protein as well, and it's very good in the summer and the spring and fall, just basically not in the winter. But this is also very good for like your ground boilies, because fish are very attracted to the fish meal. We're just throwing it in there because it's kind of like a filler, and like I said, it has oils. But they do have a low temp or hydrolyzed fish meal that I believe both of those are water soluble, and you can use them in cooler water settings. Next up is another one I really love. This is calf milk replacer. It's packed full of vitamins and minerals and protein and everything the fish need to survive. It also smells just like a vanilla milkshake, so it adds a nice little smell to your bait. This is another really good thing to use. Also with this and the whey protein, you don't want to use too much. I think like over 10% or 20%. You'll have to test that out yourself, because it kind of depends on what other ingredients are in your boilie, but those will make your bait buoyant as well. There's a few things that can make your baits buoyant, like the milk powder and shrimp meal, and basically lighter ingredients will help your bait to float. Another one I really like here is this Super Gold 60. I got this from Big Carp Tackle, but you can get this online as well. It's just basically a cornmeal with 60% protein. It's also a very bright yellow color. It says online that it varies in color, but it's usually the same when I get it. So if you're making a yellow bait, it helps a lot. Next up, we have semolina. This is also I got online, but you can get it at some grocery stores as well. This is just another binder and another filler for the bait, just to keep it all held together. And I usually don't use this as much, but for this video I wanted to use it just because it's easy to get. Next up here we have the cork dust. So if you're making freebie boilies, ones you're throwing out to pre-bait with, or you want a bottom bait, you do not want to use this. This is just to make your bait float. That is it. So we're going to be putting this in our baits at around 4% to the base mix to hopefully get some wafters. Last time I tried this, I think I put a little too much because they basically turned into pop-ups. But if we do get wafters, then we can add the cork balls to the middle of them and make some super duper pop-ups. So we'll see how that comes out. Next ingredient we have here is black pepper. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what that is. I've read a billion times that it's a great carp attractor. Even the essential oil of black pepper can be used in your liquid mix. But I love this. It kind of gives the bait a little crunch. It gives it some black flecks, and it's a good attractor. I don't know if it's as good as an attractor for hook baits, because I don't know if it's water soluble, but like I said, it gives it some black flakes, and I think it helps it stand out a little bit, especially when you have white or yellow baits or bright colored baits like that. Next up we have molasses powder. Molasses liquid is something we use in our fishing a lot, so I throw in a little bit of the powder because it's water soluble, and it's very sweet, and carp seem to like sweet things, same with catfish. So I think this is a good attractor to add to your mix because it's water soluble, and carp like sweet things and carp like molasses. I also believe it's a heavy kind of thing when it dissolves into the water, so it sits on the bottom and it kind of stays in the area. So I think that helps aid with attraction as well. Another little attractor that I don't know if this is water soluble. These things you can test out at home, but I'm just too lazy, and I know they work because I've read all about them and I use them in my other boilies. So next up we have turmeric. This is also a very strong attractor for carp. It also helps the boilie get a bright orange, yellow, gold color. So I like using that with the Super Gold when I'm trying to make a yellow bait. This mix has a little fish meal in there, so when that happens it usually comes out more brown. But I'm sure you can get lighter color fish meals, or you can replace that with something else. Last but not least, we have the whole egg powder. This is kind of another little secret that I've been using. Everyone knows about it, but in the United States, a lot of people use liquid egg. They crack open eggs and mix it all together. I like to use the whole egg powder. It gives the baits a better consistency, I feel like, and then you have more room to add liquid into your mix, like amino acids and stuff like that. So those are all the ingredients. Next up, we're gonna put them in a bowl and start to make our liquid mix after that, and then the ball just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling until we got boilies. So like I said, here's my list one more time. So that's like 20 grams, 10 grams, 10 grams, 15 grams, 15 grams, 10 grams, 9 grams, 4 grams, 3 grams, 2 grams, 2 grams. And we pretty much went through everything. The CMR is the calf milk replacer, and everything else I think you guys can understand. Another little piece of equipment that comes in handy are these little scales. You can get them, I got this one at Target I think a long time ago, but you can get them on Amazon or anywhere. When you turn it on, you want to make sure it's on the gram setting. I've done it in ounces before and everything came out all messed up. So next up, I'm going to put all the ingredients in the cup, weigh them out, and then I'm going to dump them all into this 5-gallon bucket and get them ready to mix with the old liquid ingredients. Alright, so now you can see we got all the ingredients in the bucket. Next step is to mix them up. So I like to use a big plastic bag for this, for mixing it up. It's just a lot easier. So what I do, put a little air in there, fold up the top, and give it a nice twist. This just ensures that all the ingredients are mixed thoroughly throughout the boilies. You don't want like one boilie with a big chunk of betaine in it, or a big chunk of calf milk replacer in it, and then all the other boilies have less, and then that 1 or 2 boilies with more ingredients in them, they catch fish and the others don't. You want to make sure if you catch fish, all your boilies are going to be reliable. And that's why I measure out my dry and wet ingredients and mix them together at the same time, just so I can be super precise with it. And you can see now, if it focuses good, everything is nice and mixed up. Next step I like to do is run it through a little strainer. I'll show you guys that. And that's just to get out all the big chunks, because you don't want big chunks in your boilies either. Alright, so I set my strainer over my bucket. Now I'm just gonna pour my ingredients in here. When you do like big mixes, like 4,000 plus gram mixes, this really helps because you're not gonna get those big chunks in there. Like I was saying, let me just go ahead and shake it. Now we got all our ingredients in our bucket. Next step is to prepare the liquid additives. Alright homies, now we're going on to the wet ingredients. A lot of people do this step differently than me, so you can do it different how everyone else does it, or you can do it like how I do it. It doesn't really matter, but to me it does matter, so I don't know. But anyways, people usually add in the wet mix slowly to the dry mix until the dry mix gets to a good consistency. But I like to make it the same amount of wet mix every time, so I measure it out and I put it in all the way at once and then mix it and go from there. I start with 40 ml for a 100 gram mix usually, and see if it's too wet, then I drop down to 30 or 35, and if it's too dry, then you can add a little more water and make it more wet, and then next time you can add however much water you added. So here's our updated list. You can see we got 2 ml pineapple, 1 ml buttery nipple, 0.5 ml sweetener, 4 ml metamino, 3 ml hemp oil, 2 ml molasses, and 28 ml water. I'm gonna have to add that up one more time to make sure that adds to 40 ml. But another thing I like to do is double the recommended amount on the flavors, because these are hook baits, so you want them a higher attract than all the other boilies. It doesn't really matter if it's an overbearing taste because they don't eat these. Remember, these are hook baits. So it says here on the side, 5 mil per 500 grams. So the way I figured that out is I double it, so I get it to 1,000 grams, so 10 mil per 1,000 grams. So for a 100 gram mix, they recommend to use 1 mil per 100 grams, and I double that and use 2 mil. Oh, got a little something on my lip there. Alright, so we got our 40 mil liquid in here. We got our molasses, our flavor, our sweetener, our metamino, our hemp oil, and water. You can get the flavors and the metamino and the sweetener from BigCarpTackle.com and other carp websites, or you can use things like extracts for food, for cooking, like vanilla extract or lemon extract. I like the almond extract. You can get butter extract. You can also use essential oils like black pepper essential oil. You can use like grapefruit essential oil. There's a whole bunch of different flavors you can use out there. So don't think you're limited to just carp fishing ones. I just have them, so I use them. I don't want to just let them sit. So you want to make sure you mix this up really good, especially since there's that molasses in there and that kind of sits on the bottom. And you want to emulsify your hemp oil into the water. So you want to mix this for about 2 or 3 minutes until your arm's about to fall off, basically. They have little like handheld mixers you can buy online that I use as well, but I really use those for the bigger mixes because obviously we can't really fit that into here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this mixed up and then we'll continue. Alright, so since we are using a 5-gallon bucket and there's only 100 grams of mix in there, I like to put it all to one side and then make a little hole. And that's where we're gonna pour our liquids and we're gonna mix it just like that. So for the consistency, you want it to be still wet but not sticky to your hands. You don't want it to be dry and crusty and flaking off everywhere. You want it to be a nice solid dough, kind of like a cookie dough, but when you roll it around, you don't want to have sticky stuff all over your hands. I got it to this nice little ball, and you can see when I work it, there's no dough sticking to my hands. And what I like to do is roll it into a little log like this, fold it over a couple times, and that helps get all the air out. So I've already done that a few times. You don't want to do it too much. If you feel your dough start to harden up, then you know you definitely have done it enough. I usually do it a handful of times. It really depends on the dough you're working with. Some get a lot stiffer than others, and some are a lot softer. So for the softer ones, you can go ahead and roll it out a little bit more than the stiffer mixes. This one's kind of in between. So once I get it into this ball, you can see here there's nothing left in the bucket. It all turned into this little log. So once I get this guy, I go ahead and put it in the refrigerator for about 10 to 15 minutes and let all that wet ingredients soak into the dry ingredients and make sure everything's nice and even all the way out. We're gonna drop it into our plastic bag, or you can just use plastic wrap, whatever you want. Roll it up, and we're gonna throw it in the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes. Alright, so while we're letting the dough sit in the fridge, we can get our other stuff ready. First thing we have here, or first couple things we have here, you don't necessarily need. We have this rolling table here for the 18 mil size boilies, and we have a sausage gun. These just help you roll the boilies a little bit faster and more consistent. I do make a good amount of boilies, so if you're just doing this for fun or on the weekend or something, you don't really need this stuff. You can just roll them up into balls with your hands, or you can make them into little triangles or squares. The carp don't care what shape they are, but when they're in these perfect little balls, they're easy to cast and they're easy to throw out with a launching stick. And also, if you do want a sausage gun, I suggest you get the heavy duty metal ones. The cheap plastic ones that they sell are fun to start with, but they break really easily and they're kind of hard to get used to, I'm not gonna lie. We also have a couple plates, or one plate here to transfer the boilies to when they're done. And then you can see we have our pot over here just on low heat, getting it ready to boil. I also added a lot of salt in there. You can pretty much add salt until when you put your finger in there and lick your finger, you taste the salt. A lot of people don't use enough, but I definitely do. Then we have some paper plates with some paper towels on them. Those will be where the boilies will go when they're done and starting to dry off. Another quick little tip I can give you is to put oil on your rolling table before you roll the boilies, if you have a rolling table. If not, don't worry about this. I don't know how easy it is to see, but there's oil all over the table. Basically what I do is get a little hemp oil or vegetable oil or whatever, rub my fingers in there, and then I rub it up and down the middle, all over, and all over the top. That just helps the boilies roll easier, especially if you're using a new base mix and you don't know how it's going to come out. The oil on the table just helps them roll a lot easier and gives them a nice little shiny finish. Alright, timer's going off. It's about time to pull the dough out of the fridge and get started. So we've got our dough out here, firmed up a little bit. There you can see. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll it out a couple times. I can tell it's stiffened up quite a good amount, so I'm only going to do this one time. But if it was still smooth, and you can see my hands are clean after touching it, that's how you know it's the perfect consistency. And you can see it's not flaking off or falling apart or anything. This just helps get all the air out, so you get a nice consistent round boilie. And you want to be careful. My parents' kitchen has white counters, and hopefully they're not watching, but this does stain a little bit. I think it's the buttery nipple in there that gives it a little bit of a staining power. So I rolled it into a nice little log there. Next step is to put it in the sausage gun. And like I said, if you don't have a sausage gun, you can just break off little pieces of this and roll them into little balls, and it's just the same. So we're gonna go ahead, take the top off. We're gonna pull the lever back a little bit. This one also holds a lot more dough than the plastic one, and that's a huge reason why I got it. So, like I said, I do like to make a lot of boilies. I like to pre-bait with them, and so this big size gun helps a lot. So next thing I'm gonna do is charge the gun. That's what I call it. I don't know exactly what it's called, but I just point the tip down at the counter. I don't know if you'll be able to see here, but I make a tight fit against the counter, and then I push this all the way down till the dough hits the end and starts getting hard to squeeze. And I squeeze it as hard as I can without letting the dough shoot out the bottom. And this just helps get all the rest of the air out. Alright, for this next step, I'm going to shoot out the sausages. It's pretty simple here. All you do is pull the trigger and make yourself a nice little sausage. This one is coming out almost perfect, so this is a good one for you guys to try out if you haven't made boilies yet. And like I said, you can change the ingredients here and there a little bit. So we got about 1.5 or 1 3/4 sausages, and then there's still a little bit left over in here. And I like to take that out and use it to make my custom shapes or my corkball pop-ups. It's just a little bit left over. So we have our sausages laid out on the table. This piece I just kind of custom did it to try and match the other one, so I can see if I can get a couple more boilies out of it. So all we do is line up the top, give it a nice little push down, and then I usually do this for 10 seconds. And there you can see we got a bunch of boilies ready to go. Some of them came out a little bit weird shape, but that's easy. You just kind of reshape it yourself. And next step is to pick out the ones that didn't roll very good, like these guys. and that is what we will make our cork balls with. So we're just gonna set those aside for now, and the rest are perfect, either wafters or pop-ups. We're gonna have to test, but they should be perfect little wafters. I'm gonna turn up the heat on the water and get them in the boil. All right, so for the boiling part, here you can see the boilies right here ready to go in the water. So for the boiling part for these wafters, I like to start off with 45 seconds in the boiling water, maybe a minute. These are 18 mils, so maybe a minute, but I'm gonna start with 45 seconds and see how that goes. When you do the cork ball pop-ups, there's just gonna be these cork balls covered in that paste. So you're gonna have to cook them for a little less, maybe 30 seconds to 45 seconds, and see how that turns out. Quick tip for you is you don't wanna put your boilies in when the water's boiling like this. You want it to be at a constant rolling boil. So I'll show you in a second what that looks like. It just helps keep your cooking consistently, so some of your boilies don't come out mushy and some come out cooked nice. Because when you put the boilies in, it's gonna cool down the water a lot. So you wanna make sure it's really bubbling. You also want something to scoop the boilies out with. I use this little strainer here, and for the big batches I use this big one. And then like I was saying earlier, you want something to transfer the cooked boilies onto. Alright guys, it's finally time to put the boilies in the water. I'm gonna get my timer ready for 45 seconds. So right when I get them in there, I can start it. Be careful you don't splash yourself with that boiling water. And we got the timer set here. I don't know if you can see that, but here we go. So that's what they look like when they came out of the water. They look pretty dang amazing. We're gonna have to slap them on a rig here either today or tomorrow and see how they work. But these hopefully are perfect wafters. If they don't float, they're gonna be perfect bottom baits. And I'm gonna put cork balls in the rest of the dough. So worst case scenario, I got some cork ball pop-ups and some bottom baits, but I'm pretty sure these are gonna be some decent wafters. You're gonna see your water turn a little bit of a different color. As you can see, it's not really clear anymore, and that is not a bad thing. You don't wanna empty that water. You wanna keep using it no matter how dirty it gets. All it is the ingredients from the boilies. So the more you cook with that water, the more ingredients are gonna be pumped into your cooking boilies. Now it's time to make your pop-up boilies with the cork balls. What I did pretty much was took my leftover dough, rolled it into a little snake, and then I got these little balls out of it. I like to do that just to make sure the cork balls are consistent with their size and shape. First thing I'm gonna do is open up the cork balls here, obviously. This is very easy to do, so this is one thing you definitely don't have to overthink there. And you can make them different sizes and play around and see how you really like it. What I'm gonna do is take one of these balls, which are boilies, which is 18 mil. I'm gonna split it in half as best I can. And I'm gonna wrap those two halves around the cork ball here. So what we're gonna do is stick the cork ball in there, wrap the paste around, and then I like to make little squares out of them. So that way you know the cork is right in the middle of everything. So you can basically squeeze down, make a little cube out of it, and then put it in your hand and roll it on the balls of your hand. So on this part right here is where you want to roll it, and that is gonna help you get a nice consistent round shape, just like that. So there is one cork ball ready to float. Alright, so for the next step, I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna break up that into 4 pieces so I can get some smaller cork ball pop-ups out of it. So we'll do that as evenly as possible, and it's the same thing. Just push the cork ball in there, wrap the paste around it, give it a nice little square off, and then roll it out. Bada bing, bada boom, you got yourself a cork ball pop-up. These are the 10 mil cork balls too. You can get bigger ones. I'm not sure if they have smaller than 10 mil, but the 10 mil ones seem to work pretty good for me. They actually float surprisingly well when you test them out. So that is awesome. I'm gonna get back to rolling these, get them in the water, and we will be finished. The last step will to be catch a nice carp on one of them, eh boys? Alright guys, and like I was saying, for these cork ball pop-ups, there's just a small layer of skin around a cork, so they're a lot smaller. So we're gonna go ahead and set our timer for 30 seconds on these ones. Let's go ahead and pour them in there. Start the timer. 30 seconds on the clock. I don't know if you can see that, but counting down. Last thing I guess I can talk about is drying out your boilies. I let them dry for at least 24 hours. I usually do 48 hours. The longer you let them dry, the harder they're gonna get. You don't wanna let them dry out for like 2 weeks, but some people do let them dry out for like a week if you have problems with turtles or crayfish eating your baits and you wanna get them a little harder. You can also dry them out for longer and then rehydrate them with certain oils or flavors. Just pack more attraction into your bait. So you can see here with the 100-gram mix, we got around 40 baits, I would say. I'm not gonna count them out, but you can see there's some smaller cork ball pop-ups here, and then we have some bigger cork ball pop-ups here, and then hopefully these turn out to be wafters, but they're either gonna be wafters, pop-ups, or bottom baits. We will see. Alright fish homies, looks like that's peace out for now. The boilies are drying up. Hopefully we get to use them this weekend, but please comment down below. Let us know if you liked the video, if you want to see more videos about boilie making or bait in general or anything like that. Comment down below. Suggestions are always welcome. But for now, peace out fish homies. I hope you liked the video and we will see you soon.